Hey guys, Ryan here with Outdoors Embrace, and today I'm going to be showing you how to install a floor in my 2016 Ford Transit T350, the longest and the tallest. But you guys can use this information for any van, including yours. Let's get into it. The subfloor should be the first part of your entire van install. Doing so makes every part waterproof, evenly insulated, and sound deadened. You then have a choice to lay the top floor over everything like I did, or wait until the build is done and then lay the floor around the cabinetry the proper way. Each way has unique advantages and disadvantages. One downside to doing it first, the entire floor, it could all buckle in the temperature differences, causing bumps. This never really happened in my first build, and I'd rather have my entire floor beneath everything be waterproof when a leak or spill occurs. So what makes for a proper van floor? Here are 8 different elements of a perfect van floor. Number 1, it lasts for a long time. It's durable to constant foot traffic and rubbing over and over in the same areas. Number 2, it's flat. A flat floor is easier to build on, it looks good, and it feels right walking on it. Number 3, a good floor doesn't take up too much space. If you can stand in your van, you don't want to build your floor up so high that you can't stand anymore. Also, take into consideration, you'll need to build down from your ceiling a lot more than you need to build up from the floor because of the bulk of insulation, just the amount that you need up top. Number 4, your floor material doesn't show skid marks or dirt trails easily. Your floor alone can make your build look very clean cut or dirty depending on the material. I'd go with darker brown colors, probably not white. Number 5, it's well insulated. About a ½ inch to a full inch is all you need for the floor. The bulk of your insulation should go on the ceiling, of course, where most of the heat loss or heat gain is. You don't actually need to put too much on the floor because of this. Number 6, it strongly deadens the noise from the engine and road noise below. You like to listen to your music, right, while driving? Sound deadening the floor in the back will let you hear the quiet parts of the music and not the drone of the road noise below. Sound test, put on your headphones. Still peaking. Every time you go over a bump. Number 7, a good floor doesn't allow for moisture to seep in. It's waterproof on top and around the edges because you caulk around the edges. You are in a tiny space. No matter what van you choose, you will eventually spill a drink. And lastly, number 8, the floor is super easy to clean. There aren't any cracks where dust and debris can get stuck. You shouldn't need a vacuum to suck dirt out of your floor because it is going to get so much more dust and dirt than a house floor. Just keep it simple. A quick sweep of the hand broom should be able to clean the entire floor within 1 minute. Vinyl sheeting is perhaps the only floor type that checks all the marks of everything I just mentioned. Plus, it's one of the least expensive options. You can get different visual patterns that will have your floor looking like it's tile or wood planks. Any Home Depot or Lowe's will have plenty of vinyl sheeting to look at in person to choose from. I would personally avoid vinyl planks due to the amount of horror stories I've seen from them expanding and contracting in the daily temperature changes. Plus, it's just a bit more work to get them all to fit at the end. A quick word on insulation. Do not use REFLECTIX for wheel wells or the floor itself. It is not made for this. Everyone is doing it wrong and does absolutely nothing for this part of the build. Plus, it's expensive. If you want to put some thin material down below, use sound deadening on the wheel wells and the floor. REFLECTIX is a radiant barrier, meaning that it needs an air gap on the side that it's actually going to be reflecting the heat to work. Using REFLECTIX on your floor properly would take up way too much space and still be nowhere near as effective as foam insulation. Plus, it doesn't even get hot on the floor, so what are you trying to reflect? If you're going to have any holes drilled to the floor for anything like plumbing or electrical lines, make sure that you take a picture or a video and the measurements of the empty van floor so you remember what the floor looks like at those points. The important part here is that you do not need to cut holes in the build process yet. this can come at a later date. And later on, you can always look up underneath the van to see if a hole can be cut through at that point. There are many ways to frame a van floor. Mine was done to utilize the space as best as I could. I'm working with a used van, so I actually had to do some prior work first. So let's start the install. The last owner of the van was ironically a guy who installed floors for a living. So there was residue from all sorts of materials that I just had to clean off the floor. You should completely clean your used van floor down to the painted metal because we are going to rust proof the entire floor in the next step. Here we are with the cleaned floor, and in the next step we're going to spray paint. So I use this stuff, clean metal primer. And this is the new van floor. I think that looks pretty good. So I got the Noiko, I believe this is 80 mil, and there's a few sheets on each one of these bundles. As you can see, I'm cutting it out kind of to fill in the middles. Get the little roller and you roll it on. They have these little things that pop out to make sure that once you get them flat, then it's on. These next few parts can be time consuming, but you will be rewarded at the end with a really quiet floor. In this step, we are flattening the entire floor. I use strips of plywood to cut exactly to the width of each individual valley in the van floor, but you can also use foam insulation. First, get all the measurements of each valley so then you can make all your cuts at one time to speed up the process. Now you are going to lay them all down in a zigzag pattern, front to back, so you get the most amount of support and flatness overall. So since this comes out right here, we had to trace this around the bump. Same on this side, and that's the only place it does that in the van. I saved the detailed corner pieces for last since there were many more curves to be cut in these. I cut a piece that fit close enough and then traced them on the floor where the cuts needed to be. So next, you want to sweep all the dust and dirt away so the glue or adhesive will hold them in place. I used the glue gun as I did in my first van. I never had any issue in the last 4 years, so I believe this is sufficient enough. Since the glue dries extremely fast, we quickly dotted the beams all the way down and laid them down one at a time, putting our weight over the entire beam for about 20 seconds till the glue hardened. After the pieces were down, we also dotted around the beams on the sides to ensure that they would never move. Before going much further, you'll want to sound deaden the wheel wells too. This is where most of the road noise seemed to emanate from in my van while testing. Put one sheet over the entire well and then cut diagonals in the sheet to cover the entire thing. For insulation, 1 inch of XPS board will give you some of the best results. This has an R value of 5. Use more if you like, but I want to be able to stand with 3 inches of insulation on my ceiling eventually, and I am about 6 foot 3 inches. To cut the foam, I use the box cutter. Just cut on the line you trace and then bend and snap the panels apart. To measure the foam, you can use the cardboard cutouts around detailed curves. Take your time getting the cardboard right so you don't waste any insulation when it comes time to cut. Otherwise, just measure from side to side and cut the foam into big sections to minimize thermal bridges or gaps in your insulation. Cut the parts bigger than you think, because you can always trim them down to the proper size to avoid any accidental gaps in insulation. You want everything to fit snugly in place when it comes to this. So I cut this off using the jigsaw, and I did that so it would actually fit on top of the flooring when it's up all the way. Next, you want to lay down the insulation on the plywood like this so you can use the same template of the foam to trace and cut the plywood pieces. I used 1/4 inch birch plywood. I don't believe there is any reason to use any thicker and waste more space. Make all your cuts. make sure they fit inside the van properly, but then use the plywood cutouts to also template the vinyl flooring at this stage too.
The edge. I put the weights on there because it was kind of curving up a little bit on the sides, like you just saw. It was cut this way, and this way it wasn't long enough, so we had to get double.
Now just take a Sharpie and trace the entire thing. Then go back and cut the damn thing. You'll want to use this REFLECTIX type of tape to cover all thermal bridges in the entire van between any cracks of each piece of insulation. Before putting down your plywood subfloor, put this stuff on. Many professionals believe this is the secret to proper insulation. It minimizes any thermal bridges and disallows convection to take place.
What I did, just put a whole bunch of glue on the bottom. It's wood glue, but I'm just sticking it to the foam. I'm just kind of improvising. It's what I already had in the garage.
The next and very crucial step before putting on the vinyl so you can get your followers that nice Instagram pic, you need to check for flatness. Here, you'll want to put weights down all over the plywood while you make sure that they are drying flat. During this stage, if you notice any irregularities between panels, use the glue gun to anchor down both pieces flat with each other and continue to wait for them to dry. Here in the middle, there was a pretty big difference that would just not push down flat, so I sanded the two to match them up together.
Forgot to video it, but I laid down the vinyl over the glue, and you just kind of like roll it over it, and you gotta push out the bubbles underneath, so you just kind of knead it with your hands, or there's actual tools that they sell. I decided not to get the tools though because it's a small floor. You're supposed to wait until the glue kind of gets clear when you touch it like this. It's not supposed to come off on your hand like that. So you gotta wait until it just kind of gets sticky to the touch. It'll get clearer as it dries, kind of like how you see it right there. Fucking mosquito. That's closer to what it's supposed to be like. I'm just gonna push it down now. But yeah, you push it in like this and push out all the bubbles basically. Again, you should have like a roller, but you know, it's such a small floor, I'm not gonna go through the trouble of that.
So the final stage for the floor is mostly for waterproofing. We caulked all the way around the top edges so spills wouldn't get beneath the floor and cause rust or mold over time. Basically, you put the caulking down evenly and go over with your finger or a tool as you go. We tried not to leave any open holes to the subfloor. We also put down a heavy layer of glue on the front of the van floor so no spills while driving could seep back into the floor. Again, just using materials at hand. You can hear the final knock of the floor and it sounds solid to me, like walking into a wooden floor with dress shoes. Comment below if you want me to make a short install video of how I took this side step from stock to having a nice solid oak step with a metal trim. I have tons of video on all of this too. See you guys in my next video. Peace.